Today on Joy in the City, we'll take a look at a local gathering of churches and learn about a reentry program in our area. All that and more coming up now on Joy in the City, True Stories. Joy in the City is a program highlighting people and organizations having an impact in our city. All too often, we hear about the problems and dysfunction in our culture, but we are coming with a different approach as we take a look at the good things going on right here in our community. I'm Lindsay Irvin, and you're about to see what God is doing in our city. Saturate Altoona was a weekly gathering on Sunday evenings in the month of June, where churches from all over Blair County came together to worship. Listen as we hear from pastors who worked to put this event together.
Well, thanks guys for joining me today. For those who are watching, this is the Saturate Altoona Committee, and we just got finished with 2022 Saturate Altoona. And before we get into some of the things of this year's event, I wanted to talk with Derek first. You were part of the initial team, the initial crew, who started the worship unified event back at the Mishler. So from your perspective, from the early days to now, what's been your perspective on how things are going?
I mean, I think the idea at the very beginning was largely between Richard and I. Just as we both of us moved to town and became aware of like this perspective that, you know, we're all the church and we're all trying to do our own thing, but it felt a lot like we felt it like we were competition to one another. That if you win, that means I lose. And so what I noticed, and I think what Richard and I talked a lot about, was there's all these churches, and they're all trying to do whole-scale expressions of themselves, and at times felt like it was against one another. And Richard and I just very much for years leaned into this idea of like, no, we do this stuff together. And I know for a number of years with the leading up to the one at the Mishler, I begged Richard to cancel his Easter service. I said, let's cancel Easter. Let's just do it together at the Mishler. And of course, you know, when you say that to a pastor, they're like, that's where all the people come. We don't want to do that. And finally, after I said, I think 3 years to Richard, he was like, well, what if we did it on a different day other than Easter? And I said, that'd be fine. So I think leading up to that, and then, you know, I mean, many of these guys were part of the one at the Mishler. It's been interesting to watch, you know, the way since then that with COVID and all the other things that have happened, it's been interesting to watch how the navigation of what became Saturate and, you know, the past 2 years, what that's looked like. It's more churches involved. It's more, and I think that was the idea originally, was like, we all have a role to play, but we all kind of have to know each other too. Like we're not separate. We're not enemies. We're not competition. We all do this together, and we all play our own unique role. Yeah. And so it's been cool to watch, you know, in all the different ways, the different churches represented.
Definitely. So one of the things we've done the last 2 years, for anyone who's watching and don't know, the first year we did this in 2019, it was a single night event at the Mishler. Powerful night, wonderful night. 2020, the world changed, which we all know. But when we moved to 2021 and making the decision to do this again, we went the route of outside, because in 2021 we weren't sure where we would be with COVID. So we went outside, and we went to 4 different nights throughout June. And a tremendous opportunity to see multiple people speak, and we'll get to that in a minute. But one of the things that we did last year and this year was the blessing tents or the blessing booths. Last year it went well, but this year it was phenomenal. Some of the things that I saw. Dwight, I'd like to get your input, because you were the mastermind behind the organization of the blessing booths. Talk about how that experience went with talking to people, getting people involved in that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, it's really great. We had, I think we had about 17 churches or church groups, and then 15 other nonprofit organizations that were involved. Not everyone was there every night. And so we just put the word out on social media, and everybody's contacts here And people started saying, "Yeah, I'd like to get involved in that. How do I do that? Is there a cost?" And we say, "No, there's no cost. Just come." And the idea was to bless the people who are coming to the event with something to eat or an activity or something like that. And the response was really great. So 32 different organizations involved this year.
So we had things like corn dogs and walking tacos and cotton candy, kettle corn. I mean, it was like a fair.
Right.
It wasn't just, someone making a few cupcakes or something. This was a tremendous thing. And then people had drinks. We had Gatorade, sodas, water, just a variety of ministry opportunities. And I personally, I don't know how often you guys got to do this, I personally, during the 5:30 to 6:30 time, I would walk through that space. And it was just a place of joy, a place of fun. People were really enjoying themselves. I didn't feel like anybody was frustrated or upset. I mean, it was all free, so I guess you really couldn't be frustrated per se. But it was just a tremendous thing. What is some of your feedback? I know Dwight, as the organizer of it, saw certain sides of things, but what did you guys feel with that element of the whole?
Well, that's where I spent most of my time, because it's this big social interaction, which is fantastic. And you just get to know people on a more personal level. You get to see ministries that you didn't know existed, and you get to build relationships and building rapport. I mean, it was wonderful to have so many people from the public there. But what was really cool was the leaders, the leaders in the community, the Christian leaders coming together. And to piggyback off of what Derek said, instead of trying to win members in my church, we're getting back to the main thing, which is winning souls for Jesus Christ. And we're trying to get that message out that we are one church, one body, created for one purpose, and that is just to lift up the name of Jesus Christ. And you could just feel that uplifting happening there in that group, where it was joy, it was feeding, and we saw the feeding of the 5,000, and your bellies are full. Now let's fill up those souls, baby. So,
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Tell me, what are some of the other things? We had the number of churches we had involved. I believe we had 20 different churches, multiple denominations, about 14 different organizations outside of churches. And then in all that, we had 12 different speakers throughout the 4 weeks. We had 4 people who were hosting that opened up. We had 4 different people who did a prayer focus. So we had, and then all the worship teams and all the different people involved in this, we had a large number of people connected in this. So some of your thoughts on what you saw and you experienced from, as you were preparing this and helping to lead this, what are some of the things that you experienced in watching this?
I'll try to share with you my thoughts. 2019, the Mishler event, was kind of unheard of. How are we going to get all these churches together? And we packed the place out. They had to close the doors because there was no more room. And so then a year off, COVID, then 2021. And for me, it was sort of a sense of uncertainty. We didn't know, are people going to show up every 4 Sundays in June? Is the weather going to be good? It was just an uncertain time, but God blessed, and it was great. I think this year, for me, the change was there was an expectation. I think we came there almost every night, I think every night, where there was an expectation that something was going to happen. God was going to do something. And I think the unity thing just went up a notch. I mean, another level, because even in those booths, it seemed like it wasn't 18, 20 churches serving food. It was one church serving. Now, each one had their logos and things, and but they were all together. And I know from our church ladies that served, they enjoyed serving with the other churches. They just had a great joy serving people. Indeed.
So, Larry or Matt, one of you guys, talk a little bit about, we had an expectation of rain 2 of the 4 weeks, and talk about what happened in that whole process.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that you can never really plan for, I guess, is what you do if there is a Sunday night where it's going to rain. And I know that we experienced this last year too, when we first brought this to Heritage Plaza. And because there has been at least one night last year and this year where, and I think maybe 2 nights this year, where the Weather Channel and the radar, the Doppler was showing storms coming through our way. And every night that there would be a storm, it would rain somewhere in Altoona or beyond, and it would just almost be like this divine hole, just just covering downtown, where all around us there was either a thunderstorm or showers or some type of rain, but God, and that's just all God's goodness, and His favor on us, because when you step out in obedience, God's gonna show up even greater, and so I think we would see that firsthand, and this is taking a step of obedience, and again, God's gonna have favor on us, and so it was just really cool to see, God's hand of protection, around that area each night.
Yeah. The last night we even got a little bit of a sprinkle, and people were starting to wonder, should we shut it down? And God was faithful, just awesome. One last thing, Matt, I'll ask you about this. Our first night, minor miscommunication with the technical department. But I was so blessed to see, so basically what happened is miscommunication on when we were doing this with our sound company. And people just stepped up. The worship team was flexible. Talk about because you were part of that a little bit. Talk a little about that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where God sometimes lays something on your heart, sometimes years in advance of actually doing the thing that He's called you to do. And years ago, I was able to get an amazing deal on a sound system. And whenever your individuals didn't show up, you're like, okay, I'm going to have to go tear everything out of Transformation. It's all going to have to come out. We have to take it all to Heritage Plaza. And I'm like, hang on, wait a minute. I've actually got stuff where we can do this and it's going to work. And you're like, can you go get it? I'm like, absolutely. It's not going to be a problem. We'll make this happen. And God was faithful. I mean, it wasn't as clear as it might have been with the larger setup, but everyone was able to hear. I think that everyone was able to get done what needed to be done. And God just had the right people with the right equipment in the right places at the right time. And it was because people were faithful. You were able to come here to the church and you grabbed everything that you needed. You ripped the entire board out of the church and brought it over. And it was chaos, but it was to serve God. And anytime you have something like that, it's a blessing.
It was interesting that night. The worship team that night was so flexible. Listen, I know as a musician, we're not always flexible when it comes to sound check and rehearsal and all that. They were such a blessing. And I will say that across the board. Every speaker, every band, everybody was just fluid in whatever we need to do. We need to change something, we need to add something, whatever we need to do. And I think that is just a representation of this event as a whole. How the churches come together. There's nobody coming in with an agenda. There's no prima donnas. It's like, I have to do it this way or I have to do it that way. And I think that just is a representation of what this team put together for this event. So I want to thank you guys for sharing and along with myself being on this committee to put this event on, I guess this series of events on. And I know people are already asking, are we going to do this next June? And of course that's kind of our plan, but we got some other things before that. But it was just a tremendous time. I saw ministry, prayer together, pastors of multiple denominations working together, praying together. It was just a beautiful sight, and I know that God was pleased watching it. So thank you for all that you did with this, and look forward to our next one. Amen.
This segment is brought to you by Harry's Construction, whose motto is, if you can dream it, we can create it. They are the kitchen and bath design experts, so call Harry's Construction for all your remodeling needs.
Mouth-watering family recipes, easy-to-make meals, humor, and faith fill the inspiring new show, Dano on the Counter. Born with only half a spine, Dano Burkhardt was never supposed to be able to hold his head up. Despite countless surgeries, a stroke, leg amputations, and kidney transplants, Dano developed a contagious love for life. Join Dano on Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. on Fox 8 as he shares his easy-to-make dishes and the hope that keeps him pushing forward.
We recently had the opportunity to speak with Mark Frailey from the organization Go Reentry. This organization is available to create safer and healthier communities by empowering previously incarcerated individuals to return to their communities with hope, a clear path forward, and resources needed to be successful.
Hi, Mark. So let's talk about Go Reentry. Exactly what is that organization and how did it get its start?
Go Reentry is a modern day prison type ministry. The word go comes from John when Jesus is teaching in the temple courts and they bring the lady caught in the act of adultery. And they ask Jesus permission to stone him. Eventually he says, go ahead and stone her, and they all disappear. We know that story. But at the end, Jesus asks the lady, where are they that condemn you? And he says, they're not here. And then he says, go and sin no more. So go's very deliberate. It addresses the population leaving incarceration. So go and sin no more. I often think about that lady, and I wonder if she was successful. I wish Jesus would have spent a little more time on following up with her, but he didn't. I know that if she were in Blair County or Center County or Huntington County, any of the areas around today, her chances of success would have been dismal at best, because those leaving incarceration, between 65 and 70% are back behind bars within 3 years. So a lot of people think, well, what's the big deal just coming out of jail? I mean, what's the big deal? It's a big deal. 10 out of 10 when they leave say, I'm never coming back. This place is terrible. But there's a huge disconnect because almost 70% do. So Go Reentry helps people return to the community and be successful.
And it got started how?
So almost 20 years ago, I found myself sitting in a jail cell. Unexpected. I had been a police officer, I'd been a pastor, but there I was. And before that time, I found I was very judgmental. I could point my finger and criticize somebody with the best of them. But when I found myself in that situation, I saw a whole other side of things. The humanity, the humanness of people that are there. And so since that time, I've had a desire to help people leaving incarceration and being successful when they get home. And so that's my heart. So about 3.5 years ago, God didn't speak to me audibly. I've heard that happens to people, but it didn't to me. But I sat up in the middle of the night and realized if I didn't do something now, I'm a young 59, but I realized that if I didn't do something now, it was never going to happen. So I was fortunate enough to have good people around me, and we formed the board, and we got incorporated, and we're a 501c3, and we've been busy ever since.
I can respect that aspect of your life. What better way to be able to relate to that situation than to be in it yourself? I didn't know that bringing you in here, and it just, honestly, Mark, I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say.
I appreciate that. It's we're good. Go Reentry's good at what we do, just because of my experience. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of good reentry programs out there, but what makes us unique is I've been there and I've done that, and the people that work with me have been there and done that, and we understand we've lived them. We know what the barriers are, and so when I teach a class at 2 county jails, and when I sit down in the classroom, they listen to me because they trust me and because they know I understand. And so God's positioned us in kind of a unique capacity that so we have that trust and we have that knowledge, and yeah.
So you actually go into the jails and the prisons.
So there are 7 tiers of things that we do, but one of them is education. And so I wrote a course called Reentry Strategies, and it's a 5-week course. And we talk about things from like the barriers. We identify barriers that people have when they get out. We talk about how to get along with probation and parole officers. We talk about the effects that crime has on our families and on the victims. We talk about goals. We talk about things that a lot of people don't even know who's going to pick them up. They don't know where they're going to live. They don't know where they're going to work. They don't have a support network. And so we talk about the importance of all those things and get them ready. So when they walk out the door, they have a plan. And I think that's key. If you don't have a plan, you're destined to fail. So we provide that for them. And we've had a lot of good results.
So it's worth it even if you keep one guy from going back. But do you know what your success rate is? So
we've started in June of 2020. And so I don't. I follow up as best I can. I could tell you a lot of success. I have tons of stories. We could be here for hours just telling you.
Share one with me.
There's a young lady that she's almost like a daughter. And when they arrested her, the SWAT team surrounded her house. She was a bad girl. She got in trouble. She spent time in state prison. She met Jesus there and was baptized there. And when she got out, we connected. And she's actually worked with Go Reentry for a while. And now she's moved on. Well, anyhow, so she worked with Go Reentry for a while. Her success, and she's living it today, but her success came for the agent in charge of arresting her. He worked for the state attorney general's office. He was in charge of all the drug task force in the area. He showed up at court and testified for her 6 years later, telling the judge how remarkable of a change has happened. And so Go Reentry had a small part to play in her success. She's working a full-time job now. She just bought a brand new Jeep. She's just living successfully. And that's really what Go Reentry is all about. There's tons of stories of people we've been able to help and families we've been able to help. Not all are successful. We had one, unfortunately, work with us, go to church with us, involved with us. He got back into drugs for a variety of reasons, and they found him dead, overdosed in a shed in Port Matilda. So that hurts. Take that personal. But so we've had some success. We've had some that haven't been successful, some that we've been helping are in jail right now because they haven't been able to stay away from drugs or do the right things.
So what can we do as a faith community to help you in your success in this organization?
Well, you can pray for us. In Luke, Jesus talks about the Good Samaritan, right? And we know the story about the guy beaten up along the road, and the two guys that should have stopped just went to the other side of the road. They didn't engage. They ignored it, and they kept going. The Samaritan, the one who shouldn't have stopped, did. And he went over and he poured oil on the guy's wounds, right? And he put him on his donkey and took him to the inn. And he actually gave the innkeeper his credit card. And he said, whatever it takes, take care of this guy. I think we're a lot like the inn. If you know somebody who's leaving incarceration or struggling with addiction, those kind of things, if you get them to us, we're like a broker. We're able to connect them to resources. We're able to come alongside them. So I think the big part that the Samaritan did, is he had compassion, right? He saw the need and he acted on it. It's kind of embarrassing that the two guys, I'd like to say the Christian type guys, right? The ones that should have stopped, they just ignored him. Maybe they were too busy, didn't want to get dirty. I don't know what it is. But I encourage people in the church, right? We're called to it. Matthew says, if you want to go to heaven, you're going to give the thirsty something to drink, right? You're going to feed them. You're going to clothe them. You're going to take them in when they're strangers. You're going to visit them in the hospital. You're going to visit them in prison. And so God calls us to that as a result of our relationship with Jesus. So I think this is an opportunity. So Go has another side to the coin. we not only provide services for those leaving incarceration, we provide an opportunity for the church, because at the end of that story, Jesus is talking to the attorney and he says, so who was a neighbor? And the attorney said, well, the Samaritan was. And then what's Jesus says? He says, go and do likewise. So that's the second part of our go. So we provide opportunities for the church to get involved in helping people. If you're an employer, give them a chance at a job. If you're a landlord, give them a chance to rent from you. If we need people to drive people to appointments. The judge says, rightfully so, you're supposed to go to see your probation officer, your counselor. You're supposed to go get drug tested. You have to go to 6 AA meetings a week, and you have to do this and you have to do that. And most of them don't have a driver's license. And so if they don't make the appointment and they do that a couple times, they're back in jail. So we offer support. We give transportation and having people that are willing to do that. Financially support us. That's the worst thing in the world for me to do, is have to ask for money. But if you look again at the parable of the Good Samaritan, the Samaritan took the beat up guy to the inn because the inn was equipped. The inn was able to take care of him. And he gave him his credit card and said, whatever it takes. And we need financial support to just do what we're doing. I think that's it. The thing that I failed to mention is we offer hope. If there's one thing I want to be known for when I go in and teach or when I talk to somebody, is I want to be able to say, you don't have to be one of the 70% that go back to jail. There's hope. Look at me. 19, 20 years out, and I didn't go back. And there's others. There are countless others that haven't gone back. And I try to offer hope. And I try to offer hope in Jesus. We're fortunate where we go to church. There are Sundays there are 15 or 16 people, part of Go Reentry, attending church. And when people come to church, our church, and I'm sure most churches, just love them, just like they're anybody else. They mentor them without me setting it up. They just look after them, and that's what the New Testament, that's what we're called to do. So if somebody comes to your church, just love them, no matter if they're struggling with drugs or if they just got out of jail. God loves them, and he wants us to love them as well. So those are some things that you could do, and you can pray for us for sure.
Absolutely, we will do that. I appreciate you being here today. I appreciate you sharing your story. And it was my pleasure to get to meet you today.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Impact Productions, a multi-layer technology company providing on-site, online, and in-studio video services. Contact Impact Productions to capture your story.
That's all the time we have today. Thank you for watching Joy in the City, True Stories. Let me encourage you to watch other episodes of people and organizations having an impact on our community on ABC 23 at 5:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. every Sunday. You can also catch us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Until then, please be encouraged, because God is moving in our city.